Our school principal, Mr. Perry, once shared a story about when he was young. He and his family took the ferry to Salt Spring Island. And when they were on the ferry, Mr. Perry and this other friend of his, they started snooping around. His friend took him down to near the engine room, and they got to the door of the engine room. And when one of the workers turned around, looked angrily at them, his friend threw something at the man. And then he and Mr. Perry ran off. At the end of the trip, the ferry company called their house, Mr. Perry's home, because back then they had a list of all the passengers they knew who had kids, so they're trying to find out what happened. And Mr. Perry's father picked up the phone. He was asked if his children knew anything, so he asked his two boys, including Mr. Perry, "Do you guys know what happened?" And Mr. Perry lied to his face. And I always remember that story because Mr. Perry shares the story. He starts turning red. And he still feels guilty to this day. And he said, I think my father knew I was lying, I was guilty, but I think he asked me because he wanted to see what I would say. And Mr. Perry never apologized. He never made up for what he did. So we're talking right now about offending our parents and offending the people we love. Another friend of mine mentioned, and he's mentioned this a few times in our conversations, he says, yeah, when I was a teenager, I was just so obnoxious to my parents, and for no reason. That's a very interesting observation. For no good reason, he was doing that. And some of you might remember, I mentioned this 3 years ago. Please don't be shocked if you haven't heard this one before. But when I was 17 years old, my father and I were arguing, and then we started shouting at each other, and then he approached me aggressively, and I punched my father in the face. And whenever I think about that moment, and especially afterwards, I really wonder, how can I make up for the wrong I've done? So the first reading is about atonement. It says, "It was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. When you make his life an offering for sin, he shall see his offspring. Through him, the will of the Lord shall prosper. The righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities." So could we just focus on that first sentence, please? It was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. It's fascinating. So direct. It was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. So this is obviously referring to Jesus taking on our sins. And the Old Testament, it doesn't make the theological distinction we've talked about before. The distinction between the indicative will of God and the permissive will of God. The indicative will of God says this is what he always wants to happen. The permissive will of God is what he allows. So this sentence here, it's not saying that God the Father wanted to inflict punishment on his Son. It's saying that Jesus freely chose to take on that punishment. And that is part of God the Father's plan. So atonement. Deep down, we all know we have to make atonement for the wrong we've done. It's built into our human conscience. We know there's an imbalance of justice. I've hurt someone very badly, and now I have to make up for it again. So we ignore this movement we know deep down in our conscience, but it's always there. And so when I hit my father, he forgave me, and I remember that time, I think it was a day later we hugged. But even though he forgave me, I still have to make up for the pain I caused him. So I caused him pain. And I would like to somehow take on that pain, to take it off him. I want to make up. So there are different ways I could make up for this. Obviously, I could do fasting for him. I could do a good work for him, etc. But the point is, I have to make up and make atonement for what I've done. Dr. Gary Chapman, he's famous for writing his book, The 5 Love Languages. So he talks about the different ways we express and receive love. And one of his ideas is how to apologize well. And he says there are 5 elements of apologizing. So first is, I'm sorry, I was wrong. How can I make this right? I won't do it again. And will you forgive me? So that third part, how can I make this right? That's about atonement. Okay, so whenever we want to make atonement, we want to do it in a way that the other person can understand. So if someone's love language is words, what we want to do is not only say sorry, but you've got to tell them in words how much they mean to you. If someone's love language is service, you have to do something for them. If it's gifts, then you want to take time, be very thoughtful about getting a gift that communicates your atonement. And if it's time, if their love language is time, you want to spend more time with them. And finally, if it's touch, something like a big hug would go a long way. So we come back to the first reading. It was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. So if you think about all the evil we've done during our life that we've freely chosen to do, like all the things we've done to hurt our parents, everything that humanity's done, the times we hurt our friends, even strangers, like the debt we all owe is enormous. Like you can't pay it back. But Jesus can pay it back. And it's so beautiful. He can take on that huge debt and he can actually pay it back. But the pain he takes on will literally crush him. It will crush his body and it will crush his soul. There was once a family of 4, a father, a mother, and 2 sons, and they loved each other. And the best part of their day was having dinner together. But when the youngest son was 12 years old, he started ignoring his parents. And the most hurtful thing he would do is just show up consistently late for dinner. The parents asked why. He gave excuses. I'm busy, I'm with my friends, I've got homework. The father warned him, you can't keep on doing this. Your mother works really hard to prepare dinner for you. You cannot keep on disrespecting her like this. And if you do, the next time you come, you will not eat at dinner. So he warned the son, and then the second warning, the third warning, the child doesn't listen, and the parents are very hurt. So one day, the child shows up late again, and mom serves her husband his plate of food, she serves herself, and then she serves the oldest brother. And then she gives her youngest son an empty plate. And the father looks at the son and he says, this is justice. So mom and dad start eating, no one is talking. And then the older brother still hasn't touched his food. He looks at his mom and dad look back at him, and they know what he's going to do. So he takes his plate of food, he gives it to his brother, he takes his younger brother's empty plate, and he says to his brother, this is mercy. So the youngest son eats, but reluctantly, and then the older brother goes to bed that night hungry. And this is what the first reading means when it says, the righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. So our older brother Jesus suffers the punishment on behalf of his younger siblings. He loves the Father on our behalf, and so we are made righteous. Jesus is the only one who can make up for our sins. So this truth of atonement is part of the big central message of Christianity. God the Father loves us. And not only does he love us, he wants a relationship with us. But we always push him away. We ignore him by our freely chosen actions. And then Jesus comes to reconcile us, to make atonement, to restore the justice. And so the question is, will we receive his mercy? Will we trust in him? Will we love him the way he loves us? Will we make him the center of our lives? Here's a diagram we've shown before. We call it the relationships diagram. So if we look at the top 3, this shows how relationships can be. So the one on the left is someone who is single. There is someone this person could love, but the person is outside of that person's life. The second middle image is someone dating. So that the love of their life is part of their life. And then finally, the one on right is marriage. The person becomes the center. If we look at the bottom 3 images, so we apply this in parallel to our relationship with Jesus. So there are 3 general categories in which Jesus can fall in his relationship with us. So Jesus can be outside of our life, he can be a part of our life, or he can be the center. So if I could just ask, could we just take a few seconds right now and just think which of these diagrams best represents our relationship with Jesus right now? So just take a few seconds and think about it. So my next question is, where would you want it to be? Is there a difference? And would you want to have the third diagram represent your relationship with Jesus? Would you want him to be the center? And there are many different ways a person can do this. Obviously, it's a free choice. You have to make a choice. And this is an example of a prayer you could make. Jesus, I know that you are the Son of God and have given your life for me. I want to follow you faithfully and to be led by your word. You know me and you love me. I place my trust in you and I put my whole life into your hands. I want you to be the power that strengthens me and the joy which never leaves me. So this prayer comes from Pope Benedict XVI, very beautiful. And this kind of prayer, if we make it seriously, it doesn't just have to be done in church. I know one man who made this choice when he was on the bus. He was thinking about the central message of Christianity, and that's when he made his choice. So today's reading, it helps us prepare for our Christ the King challenge. So in 5 weeks, November 21st, we've talked about this a lot of times now. I'm just going to ask all of you, have you chosen to make Jesus the center of your life? And so something we want to think about, what will we answer in 5 weeks? When I was a teenager, I had a real big sense of all my sins and all the harm I had caused. And I remember thinking, like, I can't make up for it. And so when I encountered Jesus on that retreat and his atoning sacrifice for me, the justice of it all, it just overwhelmed me. And then he offered me his mercy during confession. And I just felt so loved. I felt so relieved. He took that burden off of me. And that's when I made Jesus the center of my life. So I hope all of you can see the need for justice in your life, and then you can receive God's offer of mercy.